Let me sneak in here.
Hello, YouTube fans.
Hi.
You have lucky you today. You've tuned in to Fred and John Talks.
Lucky you.
I'm John.
We're going to make your day.
This is Fred. We have an interesting topic for you today. This is going to be dedicated to Father's Day.
Yes.
And I think we're qualified, Fred, because I'm the father of 3 daughters. And you're the father of?
I am the father of 2 sons and a daughter, in that order. 25-year-old son, 22-year-old son, and an 18-year-old daughter.
There you go. I want to give a definition straight off of what home is, Fred. I associate in my memory bank, fathers are associated with home and family and connections, and we're all about connections.
We are.
All about connections.
Yes.
You know, recently, Dr. Ben Carson and several Congress people have been talking about the importance of the family unit and that we need more fathers in the family unit. Sometimes fathers are absent or they're gone or they don't seem to stick around with children when children are born. So we want to make sure we send a strong message to fathers today.
About the importance of fatherhood.
Absolutely. So here's a definition of home. It's the fundamental unit of what people, basically a couple, traditionally work for and strive towards together. And they aspire to build, buy, or occupy a home, which they want to procreate. It also leads to procreation, and a home should be a safe space.
Yeah. I'll tell you, this is unscripted, totally unscripted, but I read something very beautiful many years ago. That the love between a husband and wife, when it's a healthy relationship. I've done a lot of marriage counseling, and I know there's a lot of unhealthy marriages out there. But when it's a good marriage and there's a lot of love there, that the love can't contain itself just with 2 people. It spills out into a new life, namely a child.
A child. Oh, I like that. Well, having delivered thousands of babies.
Over 17,000.
I like the baby.
You saw a lot of love.
I like the baby thing. Actually, interesting YouTube viewers, Fred did a little homework on the side, and he came up with some interesting information about why Father's Day started, who started Father's Day, and when it became an official United States holiday.
Okay,
So
great.
Go for it. Thanks, Fred.
You're welcome. Yep, so I did some internet research, and I'm going to share that now. The first known Father's Day service occurred in Fairmont, West Virginia on July 5th, 1908, after the worst mining accident in American history.
Ooh.
Yeah, this horrific accident killed more than 360 men and boys and left about 1,000 children fatherless. Mrs. Grace Golden Clayton wanted to honor the many fathers who died with a Sunday church service in West Virginia. Mrs. Clayton was the daughter of a dedicated reverend who had died in 1896, so she knew what it was like to lose a father. Then Mrs. Sonora, they have 3 names, I don't know. Mrs. Sonora Smart Dodd is credited with helping Father's Day become a U.S. holiday. Her story began when she sat listening to a Mother's Day sermon in 1909, and she thought that it might be nice to honor fathers. Mrs. Dodd's father, William Smart, had raised his 6 children alone on his farm after his wife died giving birth.
There's a theme there about loss, isn't it?
Yes.
When you have loss of a father or a mother, there's an absent issue for the children for being raised, isn't there?
Bingo. Mrs. Dodd proposed to the Spokane, this is in Washington, Spokane Ministerial Association and the YMCA that they celebrate a Father's Day. She chose the 5th of June because it was her father's birthday. I'm sorry.
So June to this day remains the month of Father's Day.
Yes, that's correct. And last but not least, despite widespread support, Father's Day was not a permanent national holiday for many years until 1972, when President Nixon signed a law declaring that Father's Day be celebrated annually on the third Sunday in June. It's been an official, permanent national holiday ever since.
Thank heavens he did that before he resigned.
Good point. Can't argue with that.
Well, here's something for discussion, Fred. You know, I'm interested in babies, I'm interested in birth rates, I'm interested in women's fertility. And, you know, we're in the middle of kind of a baby bust right now. When you think about it, there was a report last week about the birth rate in America is 1.6 births per woman per 1,000 women. That's the birth rate in America.
Now, you mean contemporarily?
Mm-hmm.
That sounds awfully low.
It's low because it needs to be 2.1 to sustain
The
a
population.
Yes, so we're below where we need to be. And if you think that's something, apparently 2/3 of the world's population now lives in countries where the birth rate of women is at 2 or below. So there's a big baby bust,
So
not just in the U.S.
This is
worldwide.
worldwide.
Worldwide. Well, in Korea, the ratio is 0.72 births per 1,000 women.
Wow.
So they're really, really low.
I read a long time ago about a country, I think it was Italy, but just in case it's not, I read about a country where the birth rate had gotten so dangerously low that the government kind of put it out there to other countries around there, encouraging them to emigrate to their country.
Yes, that's one of the
They
solutions.
didn't have enough workers. They didn't have enough.
There's government incentives sometimes from other countries
Yeah.
to bring immigration in,
Yeah.
or to have payments of money
Yeah.
for families to procreate.
Yeah.
So here's something that I know about that you probably weren't aware of, but back in 1965, the Supreme Court, which was Griswold
Versus
versus
Connecticut.
passed a ruling for privacy between couples. It was supposed to be for married couples,
Mm-hmm.
that they would be able to have access to the birth control pill,
Mm-hmm.
which the birth control pill was discovered and formulated in the early 1960s. So by 1965, access to the birth control pill was pretty much universal, certainly in the United States.
Yeah.
And what is interesting about that, in terms of the point of the baby bust, is that the birth rate in 1957 was 122 births per 1,000 women, ages 15 to 44.
Okay.
122 per 1,000.
Right.
By 2022, it was 56.
Oh, I was bracing for what you were going to say. Wow. That is a wow.
That's a big change. And then the CDC report, the Center for Communicable Diseases, made a report a few years ago that the birth rate in 1990, as a more recent comparison, not just 1957 to 2022, but 1990 the rate was 16.7 per 1,000 women, and in 2021 it's 11 per 1,000. So it's even gone from 16 to 11 from 1990 to 2021.
That's amazing. That's alarming.
So it's pretty clear, at least in my thinking, being an OBGYN doctor, that if you don't have men and you don't have women and you don't have babies, you're not going to have a birth rate.
Exactly.
Okay. And I think we're seeing a possibility of absent men from wars, deaths. Look at the pandemic. The pandemic, we lost
COVID, drug overdoses.
1 million people died of COVID.
1 million people died of COVID.
That's Americans.
Over 1 million Americans died of COVID. That's right.
How many of those were men? How many were men who had children? How many women have been left without fathers?
Yep.
How many men have had to take care of their children because the wife died?
Yeah.
Even 9/11. There's so many examples of mass casualties and mass loss of life that contributes, I think, overall to the lack of births. One of the other things I want to bring up in that topic is just fentanyl poisoning.
Oh dear.
that's something we're living with day in and day out.
That's another epidemic.
Oh my gosh.
We talk about the epidemic of loneliness, the epidemic of fentanyl deaths.
Yeah, I think the statistics for 2023 were over 100,000 individuals. Again, mostly young people. So we don't know how many of those were men who were
Right.
fathers or who would have become fathers.
Right.
How many are women who have been left with children? It's a very discouraging kind of concept here.
Yeah.
Then in June 13, just this year, 2024, the Supreme Court passed another regulation and law saying that women should be able to have access, universal access to an abortion pill.
That's a new pill, right?
It's a new pill. Well, it's actually an old pill, Fred.
Oh.
It's been back and forth in terms of legislation and safety, and it varied sort of per state.
Okay, but now it's
Now-
law.
Now it's law. It's the Supreme Court ruling. So I don't think you can underestimate the birth control pill from the 1960s and those tremendous birth rate drops.
Right.
And now we have women who are also capable to get the abortion pill.
By taking a pill, they have an abortion.
Yes, exactly.
That's a head scratcher.
You know, off camera sometimes we've talked about men and abortion, and you had some thoughts about that that you're going to share in the video today.
Yes, just to remind the audience for the umpteenth time, I've been a therapist for 32 years. I do about half marriage counseling, couples counseling, and half mental health. And at least here in Virginia, I can't speak for other states, I've witnessed an awful lot of divorces and custody battles where the fathers were really the healthy ones. They had wives who were either drug addicts or pretty severely mentally ill, had personality disorders, and despite all the evidence that I'm thinking of one particular client, he's just like a poster child for this, but there's a lot of cases that I've counseled the men where they've lost in court despite compiling, reams of evidence that the mother is unfit, and still the mother
The judges rule otherwise, or they rule
the mother is
shared custody.
favored in court over the father. And the last thing I'll say about it is I have one client right now who has, and he's a high-tech guy, works in the tech industry, and he has shared custody of his daughter and has been locked in an ongoing custody battle. But he has video of when his ex-wife comes to pick up his daughter and she's holding onto his leg and crying.
Oh,
Doesn't want to go with the mother.
doesn't want to go.
He has video of that for court evidence. And
How would you feel as a father when that happened? To be protective of your daughter.
Yeah, but she's got to go.
Yeah.
Because the mother comes over and says, and he caught her on film. She was very harsh. Stop that behavior, stop crying. And still, this was, brought to his lawyer, and he still didn't win primary custody. She has primary custody.
Fortunately, Fred, the whole legal world is a whole different animal.
Different animal.
I don't understand it very well.
And like I say, I don't know about other states, but what in my 32-year practice here in Virginia, they favor the women over the mother, despite evidence to the contrary.
In my private practice in OBGYN, I think as well, I would hear a lot of stories and information from my side of the desk about women who thought that they should retain custody of the child, and most of the time they did prevail. And I don't want to make a judgment whether they were or weren't a good mother, but it seemed to me that fathers didn't seem to have as much say or as much right, or maybe there's not the codification in law for fathers to be able to have custody. I don't know.
I don't know how the laws are how the laws read. I can't speak for that, but I can speak for some of the men that I've counseled, and they've it's like a living hell for them because they worry constantly about their child because the mother is even harmful. I had one case where the child was very young, And the mother had primary custody, had one because she was a prominent physician, and they believed everything she said. She had personality disorder. And he documented when he saw his daughter that every time the daughter spent time with the mother, came back with a lower weight, had been losing weight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, wasn't even feeding the child enough.
Documented that.
Yeah, and she still got primary custody. Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah, I want to mention fentanyl poisoning again because it's touched my heart, because I have a very close person to my heart whose father died of fentanyl poisoning when he was 14.
When
And
the son was 14.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen this up close and personal
Yeah.
in the last 10 years, and it's devastating to the mother and devastating to the boy. Hopefully he will achieve and live beyond it, but it's a very difficult thing.
Yeah.
I think the other thing I want to bring up to toss around is, hey, currently we have Palestinians dying, we have certainly Ukrainian men dying.
We have Israelis
Israeli men
who were
dying.
slaughtered
So
and captured.
that's not helpful to families. It's not helpful to home. It doesn't have anything to do with family. War doesn't.
It disrupts people's lives. It sends them all the refugee camps and oh my God. And the splitting up of families, the deaths of parents. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare.
I don't know
It's a tragedy.
I don't know what we can do besides pray about it, Fred. And I would encourage our viewers, if you feel strongly about it, try and pray or think about how disruptive war, drug poisoning, all these things are to fatherhood, motherhood, and to raising children. It doesn't have any helpful impact on home, family, and connections.
You know, I'm thinking two things. One, I'm not a student of history, but I'm no dummy. When you read about history, it's one war after another. And then the other thing is that a famous U.S. general said, "War is hell." Was that Patton?
I think it was Patton.
Yeah. War is hell.
On earth.
Yeah.
So one thing I like is a phrase that you hear from time to time about the faith of our fathers. You know, the faith of our fathers, I feel, was passed on to me. My mother had a very strong influence on my religion as a Methodist, but my father was very steady, very stable, and he had an influence on me for my faith, and I think I've carried that through to today. And you know, you pointed out a book to me that I've never read, and it kind of falls into the faith of our fathers, also gets passed on to daughters.
Yes, indeed. That's a great
Lead in for you.
That's a great opening for this book. I read this book many years ago. I'm going to hold it up. Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters by Dr. Meg Meeker. She is a pediatrician. Just hold that up so you can get a good view of that. And I would just like to share some of the points that are made in the book by reading from the jacket of the book, which I photocopied. Who is the most important person in a young girl's life? Her father.
Oh.
That's right. And
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah. And teen health expert Dr. Meg Meeker has the data and clinical experience to prove it. After more than 20 years of counseling girls, she knows that fathers, more than anyone else, set the course for their daughters' lives. Now Dr. Meeker shows you how to strengthen or rebuild your bond with your daughter and how to use it to shape her life and yours for the better. Directly challenging the feminist attack. Now this is a woman, writer. Yeah. Directly challenging the feminist attack on traditional masculinity, Dr. Meeker demonstrates that the most important factor for girls growing up into confident, well-adjusted women is a strong father with conservative values.
Whoa.
Okay. To have one, she shows, is the best protection against eating disorders.
Oh, I had to comment there, Fred.
Okay.
I don't know how many times I've counseled women and their kids. You know, I delivered the kid, and now the kid is a teenager, and the woman is still my patient, and she comes in talking about how she can't get her daughter to eat. Her daughter wants to make the tryouts for the some team, you know, to be a cheerleader, or she has some reason she's not eating and she has to lose weight. Oh, I've seen bulimia and anorexia. Absolutely. So I would hope, gosh, I haven't read this book, but I'm going to read it because I'm hoping that with the age of my daughters are already in their late 30s and early 40s. I'm hoping that I've done something right.
I'm sure you have, John. I have no doubt of it. So continuing on, let me repeat. To have a strong father is the best protection against eating disorders, failure in school, sexually transmitted diseases.
I agree with that. Yes, absolutely.
Unwed pregnancy, and drug or alcohol abuse. And the best predictor of academic achievement, successful marriage, and a satisfying emotional life. That is to say, a strong, involved, loving, protective father is the best predictor for girls of academic achievement, successful marriage, and a satisfying emotional life. Then here's a bullet point.
That's a big job, Fred.
That's a big job. It's a big responsibility.
Yeah.
So the book Strong Father, Strong Daughters reveals, and this is bullet points, the essential characteristics and virtues of strong fathers and how to develop them. How daughters take cues from their fathers on everything from drug use, drinking, smoking, and having sex to self-esteem, moodiness, and seeking attention from boys. Why girls want you to place restrictions on them, even though they'll complain when you do.
Vigorously and loudly.
I like that one.
Especially teenagers.
Yes. How to become a hero to your daughter and why she needs that more than anything. The one mistake fathers make, that is the primary cause of girls hooking up. You got to read the book to find out these answers. Why girls depend on the guidance of fathers through and even beyond their college years. Recipe for disaster, the notion that girls, quote, need to make their own decisions and mistakes, which isn't to say that you don't raise them to be,
independent
and decision making, choice making people, but when they're young teenagers, they need more guidance to make better decisions.
Correct.
Because as we know in the field of psychology and anatomy, the brain isn't fully formed till you're in your mid-20s.
That's correct.
Okay. Why girls need God and how your faith and my faith, or lack thereof, will influence her. My daughter came to church with me on Father's Day. She's a church-going girl, and she loved coming with her dad to Father's to Mass. How to communicate with your daughter and how not to. And lastly, true stories of prodigal daughters, in quotes, and how their fathers helped bring them back. Closing paragraph. Dads, you are far more powerful than you think you are. Your daughters need the support that only fathers can provide. And if you're willing to follow Dr. Meg Meeker's advice on how to guide your daughter to stand between her and a toxic culture, your rewards will be unmatched.
That's very, very touching, Fred. I want to pause for a minute and just, it's almost overwhelming to think that we could be that influential on daughters, and that's before you talk about fathers and sons.
Yeah.
But I'd like to say a little prayer for us in hopes that we have been able to live up to some of those characteristics and passing it on.
And in your prayer, let's include praying for fathers to be.
Yes.
First-time fathers. I've had many clients, where they have a mixture of great joy and great anxiety.
They have no experience.
No experience. They don't come with a manual, as everybody says. So yes, let's pray.
Dear God, thank you for giving us this opportunity to talk about fathers and fatherhood. We pray for those fathers to be, and for those fathers who do have children who are watching this and maybe influenced by this, who need faith and who want to be the North Star for their children, especially their daughters. And since Fred and I have daughters, I have 3 daughters, he has 1 daughter, we can only hope that we have been able to fulfill some of these issues that Dr. Meeker writes about, and hopefully our children will proceed right through marriage and having their own children into ripe old age like me. And you, Fred. Amen.
Amen. Good prayer. Well, that might lead right into the closing of with some scripture. I want to say something about mothers, but unless you have other things to talk about first.
Well, I was going to mention my favorite prayer that starts with Our Father, who art in heaven.
Yeah.
You want to follow up with that?
Yeah. Well, I want to say that we dropped the ball this year and didn't do a Mother's Day episode, and we apologize. It was not intentional. And so, having forgotten to do that, we thought we would close with some verses from the Bible about motherhood. So the first one is actually about fatherhood, and then there's 2 verses about motherhood.
Okay, good.
As John just said, probably in the world of Christianity, the best known and most often prayed prayer is called the Our Father. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And I was always fascinated by this verse from the Bible, where it talked about how Jesus called his father Abba.
Abba, yes.
So for many years, I was under the impression, because I had been in the seminary and I'd been a Catholic Christian my whole life, and I've been in religious circles, and I've heard and I've read that Abba means daddy. But then I was really disappointed. About a month or 2 ago, I looked it up, and I just wanted to try to trace the origins of the word. And it said Abba means father. But that doesn't make any sense to me, because if Jesus said Abba, father, translated, that means father, father. So I'm going to choose to believe that Abba has some endearing, closer meaning. Maybe it doesn't mean daddy. But why would he say Abba, father? Father, father. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. I like the word Abba. It sounds
like a colloquialism, almost like a colloquialism.
I can't get away from this word. It sounds endearing.
Oh, it is.
When I say and think about the word Abba, I think about being in my father's arms, being a young boy and being in my father's protective arms. But as promised, I'm going to close with 2 verses from the Bible, one from the Old Testament, one from the New, about motherhood. From the prophet Isaiah, chapter 49, quote, "Can a mother forget her baby, or a woman the child within her womb? Yet even if she should forget, I will never forget my own. Behold, I have carved you on the palm of my hand."
And they carry the baby in their womb.
Yes.
He carved them in the palm of his hand.
Yes.
But mothers carry the baby here and in their heart.
I'm very thankful that that you commented on that, because when I was preparing this, that's what came to my mind. So John and I are so in sync. This is our 75th video. I mean, we complete each other's sentence. We're almost like a married couple there,
correct,
right?
Correct. Almost. Not quite. But...
Not quite. Anyway, the second one is from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 23. And it's the scene where Jesus is weeping over Jerusalem because of their waywardness. And he says, "O Jerusalem, how often I would have gathered your children together, even as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, but you would have nothing to do with it. And he's weeping over it, but he uses a very motherly, even as a hen, a mother hen, gathers her brood under her wings. And so we offer tribute today both to fathers and to mothers. I cannot, for the life of me, think of a more important job on the planet than being a parent and raising the next generation.
And I'm also struck, Fred, that two important women initiated, started, and helped finalize Father's Day.
Father's Day.
How appropriate is that?
That is very appropriate.
So I think that gives you a lot to chew on, a lot to think about. And remember, from the very beginning of this episode, it's all about home, family, fathers and mothers, and connections.
Yes.
That's a wrap?
That's a wrap. Buddy.
That's a wrap.
Okay. Thank you for watching. Spread the word about Fred and John Talks.